a little bit above 1,500 to 2,000 new leads per month. And I emphasize new because we would get a lot of recurring leads, like downloading other freebies, but new leads, 1,500 to 2,000. And we were doing maybe 6 to 8 new clients a month, right around that 25 to 30K mark. And in my perspective, I'm like, there's no way we're getting thousands of people to download stuff and we can only get a handful of clients. So there
Yeah.
has to be something missing here. And for me, DJ, I never really understood, and not that I didn't really understand, but I didn't really understand how to fully optimize the lead nurture process. For me, lead nurture was, and it still is part of our strategy, is just give as much value as possible, right?
Yeah.
And great content via email, great content via podcast, via Instagram. But what I learned from you is that, like, those things are great only if people actually watch. And sometimes just going a step beyond that and having even a 5 minute conversation with somebody nurtures them so much more than just providing content for the sake of providing content.
Using over the last 3 to 4 months. And yeah, that sounds like such a short time frame, but a lot has actually happened already.
Yeah, it does seem like a short time from when you put it that way, and the progress has been awesome. So I'm excited to talk about it as well.
Awesome. Let's dive right in. So, Joey, before we started to work together, what were your DM and sales systems actually like?
Yeah, so before we started working together, we were relying pretty much on inbound organic. So we were missing a big part of the lead nurture process. Essentially, I had the mindset that if somebody wanted to work with us, they would just apply to work with us. So having a fairly large social media following, um, I was fortunate enough that we were generating some business, right? So we were probably getting about 6 to 8 calls on the calendar per week. And that was it. We would do free lead magnet, and then people would get into our email list. They would read our resources, watch my content, and then something magical would happen without many systems, and they would apply to work with us. And we had also implemented an appointment setter for a short period of time. There were some ups and downs with the person. Um, One, they weren't working with us full time, which was a big bottleneck, but we didn't have the right systems for DM setting either. We were doing text-based settings, so not DM based. I had some limiting beliefs around like having somebody in my inbox, and the person just wasn't really a go-getter, and I didn't have the systems or the skills to train him either. So there wasn't much success with that at all, really.
Yeah, that makes sense. So really you had your profile funnel on Instagram, you were doing organic content, but it was only like basically from the buyer's pyramid, the top 10% that we were hoping to opt in, kind of like ready to buy that brought you to a certain revenue point per month.
Yeah, and every once in a while we would run some campaigns, around creating some urgency and scarcity, and we would have a little bit of a bump up in terms of volume. I know we'll talk a little bit more about this, but I think the one thing, DJ, that has been most beneficial for me from having the right systems with a DM setter, besides the revenue growth, which is great, is the stability in the business and the predictability.
Yeah.
Because we can really say, hey, we have this many leads, this person's booking this many calls, we can expect this much business on a weekly and monthly basis, which is really nice.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you were already doing 30K a month at the time. So what made you feel like something was actually still broken or actually leaking inside your business?
When you looked at my DMs.
When we did the free
Um,
audit?
yeah, well, the thing was, jokes aside, what really made me realize that we were missing out on a lot of business was just the amount of leads that we were getting,
Yeah.
right? And lead flow has been a little lower as of recent. And we were talking about this, I think it's just because of nature of organic content, but we were typically doing a little bit above 1,500 to 2,000 new leads per month. And I emphasize
Yeah.
new because we would get a lot of recurring leads, like downloading other freebies, but new leads, 1,500 to 2,000. And we were doing maybe 6 to 8 new clients a month, right around that 25 to 30K mark. And in my perspective, I'm like, there's no way we're getting thousands of people to download stuff and we can only get a handful of clients. So there
Yeah.
has to be something missing here. And for me, DJ, I never really understood, and not that I didn't really understand, but I didn't really understand how to fully optimize the lead nurture process. For me, lead nurture was, and it still is part of our strategy, is just give as much value as possible, right?
Yeah.
And great content via email, great content via podcast, via Instagram. But what I learned from you is that, like, those things are great only if people actually watch. And sometimes just going a step beyond that and having even a 5 minute conversation with somebody nurtures them so much more than just providing content for the sake of providing content.
Yeah, the human touch, actually,
Mhm.
100%. Yeah. And so walk me through the numbers of the previous appointment setter before we actually started, because you already kind of like had something installed, as you just mentioned, like there was somebody having that human touch, but like what's the difference versus having that person versus like what we installed, for example?
Yeah. Well, a big difference, DJ, was treating this like an important department of the business rather than just having somebody who's helping us with appointment setting.
Yeah.
And I know that's a little bit more of a step back from a theoretical perspective, but I would say that's the big shift because with the person we hired over the past 4 months with your help, like this has been his full-time job, 8 hours a day, and we've been focusing on how to improve, and he's really self-motivated and is taking this seriously. Whereas, and I say that that's the biggest shift because I didn't necessarily know how to set the right expectations or find the right person to do it that way. And what I realized is with hundreds of leads coming in on a weekly basis, it needs to be a full-time job. And not only does it
Yeah.
need to be a full-time job, it needs to be somebody who's actually taking it seriously. What I think happens a lot in the coaching space, DJ, at least with people that were, that are in that 15 to 30K month range, revenue wise, where it's like, this is my business, it's serious, but it doesn't feel like a super legitimate business. It's not huge. Sometimes it's a little bit scary to invest in or have the responsibility of having a full-time employee in the business. And so we hire our friend to do a couple of hours of DM setting or a random person. And that's where I was. A mentor of mine was like, hey, man, this guy worked for us. He can't do full time. He's a full time firefighter, but he could do a couple hours a day and he's great. And I was like, well, something's better than nothing. And so the issue was just no speed to lead DJ because he would work all day and then do a couple hours of setting. There weren't really any systems in place. He wasn't really driven because he had a full-time job. So I get it, right?
Yeah.
So it was wrong person. I wouldn't say wrong time, just wrong person in general. And then us having the lack of experience of really being able to set somebody up for long-term success with the DM process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so, with what we have installed and with the clarity that we were able to provide to actually find the right person, expectation wise, what did we install together that for you made actually the biggest difference?
Yeah. One thing I'm going to add, because I forgot you mentioned to share some numbers. Um, the person we were working with had the same amount of lead flow as
Yeah.
we did with the new appointment setter. And we were struggling to get 5 calls in the calendar from him every week. And so I think in the couple of months that we worked with the person, we had a handful of sales, maybe like 3 or 4 sales. And it was commission based. So it was like, all right, like
Just
whatever,
making
we
something on
make
the
a, yeah,
side.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So we were maybe doing 3 to 5K a month from this person. In terms of the changes, so I would say even before implementing the changes, DJ, one thing that you really helped me with was learning about the process of how to find the right person. And I'm going through that right now for a different position. But it's just like, all right, I need a DM setter. I need somebody who's good. Like, where do I even start? Right. So you taught me how to do a group interview, which I had never done before. You were very generous in sharing like what to look for, what not to look for. So your very like hands-on approach was super helpful because I think a lot of people just think about like, all right, when I get in person in place, how do I train them? It's like, well, if you get a really good person, you don't have to do as much training. And so let's develop the skills to get a really good person initially, I think is really helpful, right? And you were
Yeah.
instrumental in that. So I would say that was the first system. How do we actually even find and hire the right person? And then from there, I mean, the DM process isn't incredibly complex by any means, right? It's a fairly simple and straightforward process. We implemented some back end tracking to make sure we had appropriate attribution. But from your perspective, I think that what was most helpful was really nailing down a framework that works for the messaging process, which I know we went back and forth on a lot. Um, but having a particular framework that makes sense in terms of the flow of the conversation, also understanding how to stay in the lane of just setting versus coaching, which was one of the things that was a limiting belief of mine because I didn't really understand how it worked in the sense of like, how is this person going to give them feedback and support? And it's like, they're not really supposed to. They're supposed to just qualify,
Yeah.
right? So
See
that was a
whether you
big
can get them
mindset.
towards their ultimate outcome.
Yeah, exactly. And then whoever's doing the sales call can take it from there. But really having the understanding of what a DM setter's role is in the first place to be able to give them feedback. And then from there, really the reporting with the end of day reports, and we implemented some weekly reports as well, has been super helpful because I have never had that level of structure prior, simply because we're a small business. So when it was a team of 3 or 4 of us, like I just talked to my team members every day and asked them. But as the team's grown, I think we have 8 or 9 people on our team now. It's not the same, right? So the daily reporting has been super helpful to make sure we're actually hitting KPIs and performing, which is what
Yeah,
I think is one of the biggest variables that has helped stabilize the business overall.
makes a lot of sense. And what do you think were some of the expected or unexpected insights or realizations of the implementation that we did?
Initially just doubt because again, and we were talking about this before when you're saying you're really close to getting, the 80K average per month. There's always like, I'm very hopeful and I'm very optimistic, but there's always a doubt of like, well, I haven't done that before. So is it actually going to work? I'm feeling that right now running some ads, right? I'm like, well, I've never done it before. Is this actually going to work? And
Yeah,
I think I just had some of that doubt in the back of my mind of like, can this person actually have a meaningful contribution to the business? And the answer is absolutely. I've actually been trying to talk to some of my friends to get appointment setters because they had some of the same limiting beliefs that I had. And I'm like, listen, it's none of it's true. You just don't know how to do it correctly. Um, but I think we did our due diligence with finding the right person, DJ, and Emery, who's on our team, has been amazing since day one. I think that's a big part of it too. Like I really want to credit him because he's had the right mindset and the right approach of like wanting to learn and get better. So as soon as we brought him in, of course there's some flux, there's some good weeks, there's some bad weeks, but he was kind of hitting that KPI of 10 calls per week almost immediately. And he's been improving from there. And now we're hitting, between 13 to 15 calls per week on good weeks, which is awesome. And I just was not expecting that, man. Like going from, I mean, it's created other bottlenecks in the business, which we're solving now, but they're good bottlenecks. I
yeah,
mentioned
good
earlier
problems to have.
we were having 6 to 8 calls per week. We've easily doubled that, you know. Um, Now, unexpected challenges, because they're always unexpected challenges as well, is like, wow, now we realize we actually have to improve our sales process because prior people were just coming in organically. They were so warm. I was closing like above 70%. And I was like, I'm just amazing at sales. It's like, no, it's like these people are just ready to buy. That's why they're
Yeah,
applying
the
for
top
coaching.
10%.
Yeah, exactly. So our
Yeah.
closing percentage has dropped, but it's still provided a meaningful return on the business. Um, I would say that's the most like unexpected change. And now it's like, oh my God, I need to phase myself out of sales because half of my day is going to sales calls, which is again a good problem to have, but it was the next immediate bottleneck. And I'm like, now I need to solve this before doubling down on more leads.
Yeah, 100%. And I want to touch down on something that you said for anybody that is watching this, because we did spend a lot of time on the actual framework, not a script. But how do you feel like that actually contributed towards the result that we're getting right now with the efficiency of finding the right person as well that is going to execute on that thing?
Yeah, it was huge, man, because one thing that I really appreciated about you, DJ, is that you would give us a certain set of tools to work with, and we would come back to you and we're like, hey, man, this isn't working. And you never took it defensively or anything. You were just like, let's brainstorm how we can improve it, which is really helpful because I feel like I've had experiences in the past where people are like, it's this way or no way. And if it doesn't work this way, then figure it out. So I always appreciated that from your like demeanor and expertise. But the framework was huge because initially there was no framework. So it's just like, hey man, just have a conversation with people and see if they're looking for coaching.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, when we had no framework, it kind of worked. Like he was
Yeah,
booking calls
because you're still
initially.
having the human to human
Yeah,
connection.
it was a human to human interaction. I think that was the big point. And then we tried going the complete opposite route of that and doing too much structure. And that part of that is my fault in the sense that I tend to like hyperfixate on small variables sometimes. So DJ, you gave us a framework, and then I was like, okay, let me turn this into a very specific script. And then our appointment setter was like, man, I don't feel good about this, but I'm going to follow it so we can get data, which was a cool perspective to have. And it just wasn't working because it was way too robotic. And then I think where we landed, which was really nice, was understanding what flow the conversation has to have. So, what do we talk about first? What do we talk about next? Where do we kind of end? And then what information we actually need to gather from each step before booking a call. So then the setter has a particular framework to understand like, hey, I follow this flow. I need to get this information, but the specific questions and length of the conversation really just depends on the person and how he's feeling that particular day. So that's been really nice because it also helps the appointment setter feel like they're not just a robot following a script and they're just copying and pasting, because then like, what's the point? So they actually feel like they're skilled and they can improve. And it just adds a lot of flexibility to have a conversation with each person depending on how they're responding.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is while still making sure that the sales cycle isn't unnecessarily elongated. It's like we know what to do, and of course things happen. We need to do follow-ups. People have busy days, but the setter always knows I need to do these chess moves to get towards the ultimate outcome, which is like booking the call.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more because from my perspective too, sometimes we're talking to somebody and I feel like we need to maybe have a longer conversation and Emery will book somebody within like 4 messages.
Yeah,
And I'm like, dude, this conversation isn't that long. And then we look at the conversation, I'm like, well, you did get some of the main points. And then they get on a call and we sell them. And it's like, all right, cool. And then sometimes we have a super in-depth conversation, the person doesn't convert. So there's not much, at least from my experience, not a direct correlation between length of conversation or depth in the DMs translating over to sales by any means.
true. That is true. That is true. If somebody asks you what makes Jermaine's approach different from other sales consultants or perhaps DM coaches that you had as well, what would you say?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be as transparent as possible. I haven't had much sales coaching or DM coaching like guidance, but what I really appreciate about your approach, DJ, is you actually care, man, which is really nice. Right? I remember initially when I was like, dude, I've never done a group interview. Because your first thing was like, all right, we're going to do a group interview here. This is how you do it. And I was like, dude, I don't really know how to do that. And you've done a lot. Can you conduct the first one for me? That was not part of our agreement by any means, and you were willing to do that. And not only were you willing to do that, you guided me through your decision-making process so that I could actually learn how to do it. So besides stating the obvious that you're really good at what you do, DJ, and I think your business reflects that, and I think anybody watching that probably already knows that from watching your content and going through your stuff, it's just the level of like care that you bring, which has been always really nice, right? And even before we started this call, and I was like, dude, I'm sorry I haven't been as communicative. You've really been following up and wanting to make sure that we're doing well and that we're performing well, even though we haven't communicated super frequently like the past couple of weeks. And that to me speaks volumes because it shows that yes, you run a business. Obviously, you want to grow your business, but you also really care about your clients being successful. Maybe that's not the main thing people would say because I feel like a lot of people are like the systems, the this, the that, the actual features. But for me, it's been the help, man, because the information's out there. You can Google a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
But then it's
it's the
really like when
actual
you implement, yeah,
implementation.
yeah,
Yeah.
when you implement, there are going to be small challenges here and there, right? And I remember even when we were first talking and we were talking via text, I was on a Disney vacation with my family, and I was like, dude, I think we're just gonna figure this out. And you were like, man, I know I can help, and I would hate for you not to make the investment. And then 3 months down the road, you're still in the same place. And I was like, F it, let's do it. And I'm really glad we did because I haven't shared the numbers, but this month alone, we did between 35 and 40K in new cash collected just from the appointment setter, which has been really cool. So the investment has definitely paid itself over multiple times, which has been really nice.
Yeah, I think you made ROI in the first couple of weeks of us working together,
Yeah,
if I
yeah,
remember
yeah, for sure.
correctly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was also fun to witness. But also something that I've seen is that you have these struggles right now. We need to find a closer. Probably the next thing that breaks is delivery. But then installing a second setter running ads, like you're
Yeah.
only operating still at roughly 40% of the DM setting capacity of your business. And that's what makes me actually really excited for the future of your business.
Yeah, I'm excited too, man. I appreciate all your help, DJ.
Awesome. What actual results came from the new systems? What did we produce over the last 3 to 4 months?
Yeah, so every month has just been a little bit more and more. I think you have the very specific numbers better than I do from our setter, but I believe the first month was probably like low to mid 20s, and then I think the next month was just a little bit higher. Every month it's probably gone up 5 or 6K, and then we just hit close to 40K with the just with cash collected from our setter this month.
Yeah.
So that's
So
been
from
really nice to see.
5K to 40K new cash in roughly 4 months with a setter and the actual systems.
Yeah, and what I will say is like we have the fortune of having the lead flow.
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah.
that's been really nice. And I think what's contributed to the growth over the 4 months isn't getting more leads, it's that our appointment setter has actually gotten better. And I'm just giving him the freedom to test different things when it comes to conversations. And he's just felt really comfortable in the role. And so that's why I mentioned initially too, like finding the right person because the person we have like really cares. And every month he's just been getting better and better, which is really nice to see.
Yeah. And for anybody think is watching this, like what is the ease of leadership that you have right now? Because like pretty much it's an autopilot, right? Apart from the weekly meetings that you have with the seller.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much completely on autopilot, man. And now like we don't even have like any super set meetings. Like I make the time available for him and I just send him a message. I'm like, hey dude, do you need any support right now? And sometimes we'll hop on a call for 15 minutes. Sometimes we'll talk for an hour. Sometimes we don't talk at all. So that flexibility has been really nice. I've really been trying to adopt the mindset of only bringing on people to the team who have that leadership mindset where they're treating the role as if it were their own business.
Yeah.
Because as a small business DJ, like there's a ton of opportunity for these people as well, right?
Yeah.
If we get to the point where we have a full sales team and maybe we have more than two setters, like I need somebody to manage that. It can't be me. So I try to set those expectations initially because I don't want to overpromise, but I do want people to know that if they work hard and there's growth in the company, there's going to be reward for them as well.
100%. Um, we talked about this a little bit because you kind of like are going towards those 85K steady months, but how has this affected your ability to actually think more long term and not just chasing that short term cash, for example, where you had to do certain challenges or
Oh man, that's a great question. Um, it's been great. So there's still the bottleneck of the sales process in the sense that like there's a lot I want to work on, and it's been tough from a bandwidth and time perspective, but we're solving that at the moment. Excuse me. And having the setting systems in place has allowed us to be able to focus on solving that. Because before, if we had a bad month, I would freak out. And we had a bad month probably like once a quarter. We haven't had a bad month in the past 5 months, which has been super nice. And when I say not a bad month, it hasn't been crazy growth in 5 months, but just stability, which is nice to have, right? It was like we have a bad month. Let's run a promotion. Let's do something for our current clients to re-sign early. Let's give them a free month. Let's run a challenge. And there was my mental bandwidth was always pulled in a million different directions because I needed to come up with something to come up with cash fast, right? Uh, which hey, like it kind of always worked. So like whatever. But now it's been nice because I actually just talked to my business partner about this not too long ago. We haven't ran a challenge or any sort of like promotion since having the appointment setter. And I told my business partner, I'm like, we're not gonna do any promotional stuff until we really solve the current constraint of the business. Because you have Hormozi's book in the back, I have mine right there. Anything else is really a distraction, right? It really is. So yeah, I could run a challenge next month and have a great cash collected month next month. But that would take so much time and
short
effort
term
to
pleasure.
develop.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it really sets us back. So the immediate goals are getting the closures in place. I'd love to have at least two or three closers, two or three setters, getting our ads in place. And if we can do that, I think the sky's the limit and then scaling becomes, I'm not going to say easier, but like at least we have a more direct path to where we want to get to. And the only promotional cycle that we're really going to do is, like a Black Friday sale or something like that, because people are ready to buy around that time. But besides that, it's just been nice to not have to worry about like doing promotional cycles and having fluctuation in the business. And that steadiness has allowed us to really focus on the things we need to focus on.
Yeah, 100%. I think we can safely say that we not only stabilized your business, but we also doubled it and stabilized it based on what we
100%.
currently see so far. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, question. What do you think would benefit most from this kind of work that I did with you?
What do you mean? Oh, who would benefit most?
Yeah, kind of
Um,
business owner.
yeah, and my perspective is biased because it's the place that I was in.
Yeah,
For me, it's anybody who is in a position where there is a ton of untapped potential, right? So if you have a fairly large following or you have a lot of volume, or maybe you don't have a huge following, but you're in a position right now where like your social media is getting a lot of eyeballs, or even if you just want to optimize your systems. For me, like I mentioned earlier, we had so much lead flow, we had so many people downloading lead magnets, but we didn't have any conversion mechanism. So if your conversion mechanisms aren't there, or your nurturing mechanisms aren't there, you would benefit tremendously. Like DJ mentioned, we made our investment back in the first couple of weeks. That's because we had the lead flow. If you're not getting, you know, 300 leads a week, but you're getting,
It's not just you, honestly. I work with a crypto offer that has 7,000 followers, and she actually collected 12K from her DMs as well because we had like
yeah.
core focus on what the money-making activities actually were. So it just goes to prove you don't need a big following that you have, for example, which is like 400,000. But even with a following of 7,000, the system still works.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Even if you don't have super large lead flow and you have a lower lead flow, it's like if you're still not doing anything with those leads, it's missed opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. What would you say to perhaps somebody that has a setter but no real infrastructure or feedback loops yet versus like, could be you because you had a setter in the beginning,
Yeah.
but like,
Yeah. I would say it's a good investment in the sense of like learning how to do it correctly. That's another thing, right? Like there's a difference between wanting to play the guitar and just like picking it up and playing it and then like hiring a guitar instructor, right? It's always going to expedite the process. You're going to learn how to learn correctly. You're going to learn how to do things correctly. So that's been huge too. Yeah, we had an appointment setter. It just wasn't successful at all. And we also didn't take it too seriously. So I would highly encourage somebody if they have an appointment setter, but they're not performing the way they should, and they have a hunch that they should perform to a certain level, right? You and I probably have a lot of mutual friends who have an appointment setter who just aren't performing at all.
yeah,
So setting those expectations, making sure you have the systems in place, and then like also, DJ, one thing that you helped us understand was like what's realistic and what's not, in the sense of like, hey, is this person actually performing well based off like how many leads we're getting, how many calls we're booking? So setting
yeah,
those
the
KPIs
actual
and
data.
expectations were huge.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. Because before you had that data, you had the appointment setter. Can you resonate with the saying like, well, we had a setter, he was booking some calls, we were making some sales, so I guess it's okay.
Yeah.
I think a lot of
Yeah.
people have that have DM appointment setters.
Yeah. Because they're just, I mean, for the most part, a lot of DM setters are just commission based.
Yeah,
So it's like, yeah, they make a couple sales, but it's like, and for the person who doesn't really want to grow their business, I guess that's fine. But the
yeah,
person who's
truly.
not doing this as like a side thing and really wants to grow a business, then that's not fine. Right. And in that sense, I would definitely really encourage getting help to implement those systems and those KPIs and data tracking and all of that.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I appreciate you for the feedback, Joey. It was a delight to be working with you, and I'm really excited to see where you're going in the next 3 to 6 months.
Thank you, DJ. I appreciate you, man. And I appreciate all your help. Truly.
Awesome. All right, I've threw it inside the waiting room, so I have the recording here. Uh,
Awesome,
let's hope
brother.
it let's hope it did fully record. You said you had a couple of friends that you were talking to that also need appointment setters. Is there any like referrals
Yeah.
that I can ask you for
Yeah.
that would benefit from what I do?
Actually, Dr. Brandon Barber. He's in Champ Dev.
Dr. Brandon Barber. Is there any way that you could set us up in a freeway conversation?
Yeah. Let me actually send them a message and just see how everything's going. And let me just, because we had talked about appointment setting before, and let me see if he's made any progress there. And I'll connect you, because I don't want it to come off like pushy either, because I feel like I wanted him to join Champ Dev too, and I was definitely
Ah, yeah, yeah,
the
yeah. The
the
facilitator there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I am gonna send him, not Barber, Parker. Let me send him a message and just see how he's doing.
How much is he doing roughly per month? Is he already kind of like in skill stability, or is he like just really starting out mode?
Um, so last we talked, he was trying to get to 20K a month, but he has 1 million followers. He just doesn't have any systems.
He has
So
1 million followers?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh my God.
He's just
Like I
like no
gotta talk
systems.
to this guy.
Yeah, 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 for sure. DJ, I gotta let you go because I have a call right now with the closer. But dude, thank you so much, and let me know if there's anything else I could do for you. Okay?
Yeah, 100%. I appreciate you. We'll stay in touch for sure.
Yeah, brother. See ya.
Bye bye.